Welcome to Polaris Live. This is your host, Sarwar Kashmiri. Thank you for joining us for today's special launch of our Polaris Live Roundtable. We had a few technical glitches to work out, so a few minutes late, but that's what happens when you come live, I guess, from Beijing, Wall Street, and from Toronto, Canada, where our producer is. This is a Polaris Live Roundtable. It brings together leading global experts for an in-depth discussion of the most consequential relationship of our time, that between China and the United States, and joins the regular one-half-hour Polaris Live program. This user-supported channel is brought to you live in conjunction with the Foreign Policy Association of New York. If you have questions for today's guest, please feel free to submit them using the bar on the right-hand side of the screen. A few months ago, President Trump came up with a new concept for levying taxes on countries. He called it reciprocal tariffs. However, recently, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled the tariffs unconstitutional. Yesterday, the country of Malaysia declared its trade agreements with the U.S. null and void because of the Supreme Court ruling. Will other nations follow suit? The U.S., its markets and its currency stand supreme in the world. A key reason is the trust global countries have in America, the belief that the U.S. is a country of laws, not men. This belief is now being questioned, is it? So what next for the mighty dollar? Will global trade now be increasingly financed through other currencies, especially China's renminbi, rather than the US dollars? How will Treasury officials around the world deal with this unprecedented development? To help us discuss these complicated international issues and to answer questions from our viewers, Polaris Live has today brought together experts from China and US. The panel will be moderated by the well-known Wall Street currency strategist, Mr. Marc Chandler. Marc Chandler is Managing Director and Chief Market Strategist for Bannockburn Global Forex. He has covered global capital markets for more than 30 years. A prolific writer and speaker, Chandler appears regularly in the financial media, including Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, and Barron's. Marc also provides his insight and commentary on CNBC, Bloomberg, CNN, and Fox. His publications include the bestseller Making Sense of the Dollar and Political Economy of Tomorrow. He teaches at New York University's Center for Global Affairs and the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia. Without further ado, let me now turn over the proceedings to Mr. Chandler. Take it away, Marc.
Thank you very much, Sarwar. I'm very excited about moderating today. As you mentioned, we have two distinguished guests, and these are the very timely issues given what's going on not only in Iran, but the delay of the President Trump, President Xi meeting that was going to take place later this month. So I'm really excited to host the show, and I think without further ado, maybe I can invite and introduce our guests. Our first guest is Dr. Zhou Mi. He's the Deputy Director of the Institute of America and Oceanic Studies, part of the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Our second guest is Mr. Marc Sobel. I've known for many years. He is a former Deputy Assistant Treasurer Secretary for the U.S. International Monetary and Fiscal Policy. So I'm very excited to have you gentlemen join today. And these are, like I say, this is the key relationship in the world. I see even the U.S. administration refers to the U.S. and China ties as the G2. So without further ado, let's get into our subject. Maybe the first place to begin, maybe Dr. Zhou, you might want to begin then, is maybe talk about the Gulf War and the apparent delay, perhaps as much as a month or more, in President Xi and President Trump's meeting that was scheduled or planned for later this month.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thanks, Savar, for having me in this show. I think it's a very important opportunity to discuss the related issues with our friends from United States. And I think that is really a very tricky time that we are seeing. Many new changes are happening. As Mark, you mentioned that also heard some news from the website that they said that this meeting will be delayed, like the Treasury President Hay has expressed this kind of reasons because of U.S. Domestic affairs. But personally, I haven't heard any kind of official statement coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from China. So in this regard, I would say that all of these meetings are just trying to be scheduled maybe later this month, as previously guesses by the media. But now it seems that there are still a lot of other issues we have to deal with. So many people are expecting the meetings because it's very important. The two leaders are planned to trying to give more discussions and also trying to discuss about what we can do to deal with this uncertainty. But some new things happened, like in Iran, like in Venezuela. I would say there will be so many surprises to the market. So in my understanding, maybe we need some more time to have a better understanding what is happening, and we can just discuss what will happen in the future. So as both teams have the discussion, economic discussions in Paris, I think that from this statement by the Vice Minister of China, of Chinese MOFCOM, we have a very deep discussion and very honest discussion about the issues between our two countries. So I think that these words really say that we still have many things that we cannot reach agreement with each other or consensus with each other. But we do have some good attitudes. The attitude is that we appreciate what we have been doing for the past 6 rounds of discussion, and that's also giving us some more hope for the mechanisms between these two countries, and I hope that will also beneficiary for the market.
Thank you. Mr. Sobel, we've seen some news that Iranian tankers carrying oil to China have been able to go through the Strait of Hormuz unmolested. And now we've got this delay. President Trump had said that he would be very angry at countries that didn't help provide escorts or provide safety through the Strait of Hormuz. China, among NATO members as well, do not seem to be forthcoming with this. What do you make of this, and what do you think about the delay in the meeting between the two presidents?
Yeah, that is a very complicated, in my understanding, about the ships which can come through the Hormuz. But I also heard some of this news that some Chinese tankers are able to go that, but I'm not quite sure about whether they have verified that's truth. So according to the declaration from the Iran government, they said that the tankers from United States cannot just go through that strait. So I think that is really because that was in the war. So it's naturally to understand that they do not want to be defeated so easy. And for my understanding, maybe I guess that in the negotiations, both sides really expressed these concerns about that because the crude oil is really very important for China and for the United States, for the international markets. So it's not only about the crude oil, but also about many logistics. So the block of that strait is really giving the pressures to the market. And for China, we also suffer from that. So I don't think that we want this block to be there for a longer term. But the situation cannot be judged by us. We're not the stakeholders related closely to this war or the strikes between United States, Iran, and Israel. So it is really a problem that we need to sit down and discuss. But I don't think that we can just discuss this issue without the participation of Iran.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sobel, what do you make out of this? The Chinese oil through Iranian ships going to China, and do you think there's a link between the postponement of President Xi and Trump's meeting and China's reluctance, like I say, our NATO members' reluctance to provide escorts through the strait?
I'm not quite sure about the relations.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Dr. Zhou. I was thinking for giving Marc Sobel a chance here.
Okay.
Thank you. Marc, we can't hear you. You're on mute. Sorry. There you go.
Thank you, Marc, for having me today. Great to see you. As you said, we've been chatting away for decades between us. So first of all, is the delay associated with the war? You know, it makes sense that Trump says, you know, we're in the middle of the war and it's a bad time for him to come to Beijing. So from that standpoint, not a big deal. I have to say, I really didn't have high expectations for the summit per se. And they're going to have plenty of other opportunities to meet over the course of the year with some of the G meetings and APEC and whatnot. So if it's a month's delay or two, I just don't see that as a big thing. I don't see it as a big thing because I had low expectations from it. In my view, China and the United States are in I'll call it a tense détente. President Xi strikes me as very much a man of realpolitik. I think Trump's instincts are less hawkish, given his transactional nature, than many others. And so I think both of them kind of want to perpetuate or avoid worsening that tense détente. I wasn't expecting much to be on the table. We can get into that later if you'd like, but I just wasn't seeing much scope for major deliverables, for example. In terms of the Straits of Hormuz question that you posed, I think Dr. Zhou is fully correct. It's not in China's long-term interest for the straits to be blocked and all this mess to persist. That having been said, China is an ally of Iran, but I think China has much bigger fish to fry than Iran. I think President Xi sitting back quietly while Trump is bellicose and being rebuffed by his allies makes the U.S. look bad. It makes Xi look relatively good. So I think in a way, China's standing is being enhanced. Ours is being diminished by a war where it seems as if the administration launched, didn't think through the consequences, and is now causing a global, I'm not going to say chaos, but a global mess, a challenge to the global economy, ruptures between us and our allies. So I think that's where we are for now, and we're going to have to see how long this persists, how much damage is created to the global economy. I don't think necessarily that Beijing wins in the long run, but for now, I think Beijing is looking good.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Zhou, maybe you should say, if you had this opportunity, we have this picture here of just a Business Week headline about how important that U.S.-Chinese relationship is. And if you had the opportunity to have a few minutes with President Trump, what would you advise him?
Well, it's a very interesting question. So if I will have the opportunity, I will advise him to. I think that I will advise him to respect the market decision. like the market is real expecting some of the certainties, some of these principles that we can adhere to, but we are seeing so many surprises from tariffs from Venezuela, from Iran, or even some other countries or regions in the world. So there are so many uncertainty which can just make the people to think the decisions in the short term. And I don't think that is a good news even for the U.S. because we are seeing the U.S. is trying to revitalize its shipbuilding industries and some of the manufacturings like the car makings, the steel factories. But these investments do need some longer term. So without that, I don't think that the people will dare to do that. And the second, I would advise that maybe United States is different from China. Maybe United States is stronger in the military power compared with China, but I don't think that United States can just overlook China in the position in the different areas, almost all areas. So if we're just trying to have a better planning like the MAGA, I would say that it may be not possible without the participation of China, and even if there will be some opposition from China, it will be even more difficult. So the best way is that both countries should try to respect each other and trying to talk about the differences and dealing the differences in the much more better way instead of just giving pressures to the other side. I don't think that would be possible and that would be useful.
Good, thank you. So, Mr. Sobel, what about you? If you had a chance to talk with President Xi, what would you try to tell him?
Now, if I was in the room or if Mr. Trump is in the room with him.
Just you.
Just me. Oh, if I were there, I would probably talk to him about China's growth model and structural woes and economic issues, and urge him, as I would the U.S., to find ways to engage and cooperate far better where we can, recognizing that we each have legitimate issues with the other party. But I think that would be the mega perspective that I would take. So let's keep things on an even keel. Let's cooperate. We're 40% of global GDP. If we mess up, not only do our own country suffer, but the whole world suffers. And let's avoid hyperbole and let's keep in touch with one another.
Very good. Maybe, Doug, you can show the next chart. One of the issues that we're talking about broadly in the global economy is that for the first time in about 30 years, central bank holdings of gold is worth more than their holdings of treasury bonds. You can see on this chart this crossover for the first time since the mid-90s. What do you make out of this, Dr. Zhou? We realize that China wants to have a more internationalized RMB. What do you make out of this?
In my understanding, when I was studying in the college about 30 years ago, so my major is international finance. And during that time, I think that our teachers told us that China will keep on the direction of internationalization of RMB. So it's almost 30 years, almost 30 years past, and we still see that the internationalization of RMB is not so large compared with the position of US dollars, euros, yen, different currencies. So I think that the reason we know for the international finance, especially for the currencies, one of the main reasons is to trying to pay the product that we imported from other countries. So in this regard, I would say that China is really having some advantages of the currencies, use our own currencies, because China's foreign trade is so large. It's a number one, compared with many other countries. So it's from the institutional arrangement by the Chinese government and other countries. If we have the better mechanism to make the settlement easier, to make the people easier using the RMB, it will much easier. And the second, I would say that is because of the fluctuation of US dollars, and it's not only about the currency, but also about the fiscal status and some of these treasury pressures, the debt issues, and so many other issues that makes that US dollar is a little bit more fluctuated in the price. So some people, especially for China, many Chinese companies, when they are selling the products to other countries, they will undertake a very huge risk of the exchange, and that will be the reasons why the trade with China is much more having the relation with RMB. And the third reason, I think, is coming from U.S. government on abusing the power of the financial resources. And I don't think that the world order will also always be there. If there are some kind of bad things happening for the credit, people will change to some other alternatives if they are just choose RMB. So that is the reason why we are seeing more usage of RMB in the international market. But I don't think that is the position or the position of RMB and US dollars hasn't changed, and it will not be changed in the short future. We are still in the position of a very tricky time, especially when you are talking about the crude oil. Because crude oil, nominated by the US dollars, are now facing even more challenges. So that will give people more reasons to think about what are still be valuable for their investment and portfolio. So maybe RMB is one of their choices.
Thank you. Maybe Doug, you could put up the chart that Dr. Zhou presented. We have, I think, just showing the increased use of the RMB. I thought this was a fascinating chart, just showing its increased use in international trade. Mr. Sobel, I think you recently co-authored an essay in in the Financial Times with a Federal Reserve economist. And I know for a long time, people like yourself and people like myself had thought that the dollar was really unchallenged. But I think that your essay is part of this movement now among people like gray hair or gray beards that are beginning to question that. And I think your essay was part of that. Can you maybe just briefly go over your main arguments, why you thought that? I think that the image was of termites eating away at the base of the dollar. Can you talk about that, and especially in light of Dr. Zhou's comments about the increased role of the RMB?
Okay. Am I going to get a chance to talk about your gold chart?
Please address that too, for sure.
Okay, let's start with the gold chart and dispense with that, if you can put it back up. Because I think people, can you put the chart back up, the gold chart? In any case, I think analysts are get vastly overexcited about this chart, which is why I wanted to say a word on it. So, as you know, Mark, as kind of the major advanced economies held huge stocks of gold. I think the United States holds something like 260 million ounces of gold. Germany, Italy, France hold huge stocks of gold. It's a legacy of the gold standard and the Bretton Woods system. And then we got off gold in 71. So there are these huge stocks that just sit there in vaults, but they're not doing anything. But in the meantime, the price of gold is surging. And in terms of reserves, we saw a huge buildup in central bank reserves kind of in the early 2000s. And then when China had hit some skids in 2015, 2016, their reserves went from 4 trillion to 3 trillion. And since then, there's been very little accumulation of reserves. So that explains the lack of accumulation of reserves somewhat explains the flatness of the blue line, whereas the yellow line is rising mainly because of valuation effects. To be sure, that China, India, Russia are buying gold to some extent. But in any case, I think this is largely valuation. Yes, gold is seen as increasingly as part of a diversified portfolio. But if one wants to read into this chart that something is absolutely fundamentally changing in the international monetary system, maybe at the margins this reflects evolution in the system, but it is not, a transformative issue, in my opinion. Now, to come to the second issue, you asked me about the piece that I wrote with Steve Kamen, who used to be the head of the Federal Reserve's International Finance section. Yes, it basically said that the title, I think, was something like "Termites Are Feasting Away at the Foundations of Dollar Dominance." And so basically what we argued, and Steve and I have written pieces in the past that make the case, why is the dollar dominant? It's not a fiat from the heavens. It wasn't mandated by the U.S., but it reflects the properties of the U.S. economy. So we have a very big economy. We have the most deep, open, liquid capital markets in the world. We've had sane macro policies. We've good rule of law. We've been a trusted ally. We've had Fed independence. And then the network effects, the U.S. global banks are among the most healthy, profitable in the world, and they intermediate flows. And then there's inertia, right? The world relies on it. It gets the job done. It gets the job done with cheap transaction costs. So why not? If it ain't broke, why fix it? And what we argued in the piece is that those properties are being undermined. So we pointed out that our fiscal policy is utterly unsustainable and going in the wrong direction. We observe that the U.S. is increasingly becoming an untrustworthy ally. We noted the Fed attack on the Fed's Federal Reserve, and we noticed some of Trump's transactions in which he's taking stakes in firms and whatnot. And so we argued that these types of actions undermined the foundations of prosperity. That said, the U.S. economy is still the biggest in the world. There's no substitute for the depth, liquidity, and openness of our capital markets. The network effects that I reference stay in place. There aren't any great alternatives. The euro is regionally strong, but it is not global in the sense that you don't have kind of euro-safe assets. You have bunds, you have oats, but you don't have euro-safe assets and whatnot. The RMB, I don't see that providing a major alternative. It's one thing for it to play a major role on trade, but as a financial vehicle, there's still capital controls. There's lack of convertibility. The Chinese economy faces massive issues. I think people would not be inclined to trust Chinese capital markets or Chinese property rights. So I do see the RMB rising a bit, but I don't see it becoming a major alternative. So to me, dollar dominance is here to stay for quite a while, but that's not inconsistent, as I said, with the foundations eroding. I would note one other thing about the article that was written. Steve put in there some charts, and he observed that the dollar traditionally is a safe haven or a risk-off currency. It does well in those environments. And that if you look historically, when the VIX spikes, the dollar goes up. But that's not what happened after Liberation Day. It's not what happened after some of the recent developments on Greenland. Although with the Iran war, the dollar has moved up with the VIX. So perhaps the dollar is losing some of its specialness, as some of the academicians call it. But we'll have to see how that evolves in the future.
Thank you. Dr. Zhou, I see that you've written about the emergence of Chinese companies, direct investment abroad. The U.S. pursued a similar strategy after World War II. At the time, the dollar overvalued protectionism, and building around those protectionist walls, building production facilities across the world. In the 80s, second half of the 80s especially, Japan went on the same type of strategy, a foreign direct investment strategy. One difference is that now the RMB is regarded as undervalued. Do you think it's still going to be pursuing this direct investment strategy? And maybe you could also address maybe what Mr. Sobel said about the limited convertibility and the trust in the Chinese capital markets and property itself. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that it's very interesting to talk about the convertibility. And in my understanding that the RMB market is still separated from the domestic one, from the offshore ones. Well, I think that for the administration of the RMB's internationalization, especially in the capital accounts, Chinese government are really cautious about that. So we know that the currency, if you are able to have a strong currencies in the international market, it will be beneficiary for the country. But I don't think that is only our, the advantages. We also are going to face some of the impacts from the offshore market. So the government administrations are really cautious about this pace. So I said that for almost 3 decades, the internationalization is not to leap are very big step. It hasn't, be done by that. It's not just from the market, but also from the government administration. In my understanding that that is also our, our problems. We are going to do something to change in the future, because we are still in the phase of a lot of international trade, like for the export and the import. So as you mentioned that, United States companies are really good on outward investment in the 1960s or 70s, and the Japanese in 1980s because of the appreciation of the currency. But for China, I don't think that is, the same status. We are having very different situation, and the best way for us to develop is trying to have a stronger domestic market and trying to make the economic relations much more stable than before. So in this regard, we encourage the Chinese companies to investment in other countries since 2000. During those time, we proposed the going global strategies, but the real meaning of that is we encourage the enterprises to be better understand the situation of not staying only in China. They can try to go abroad, trying to find better market and better resources, and that will be beneficial for them. But we didn't supported them to do that by the financial policies or fiscal policies. So we just giving them information and the encouragement, and we also reminded them of this, some of the disadvantages or possible risk of doing that. So I would say that is quite a different situation. So as the graphs that Mark has just presented, the most important reasons why the people are using RMB is because of the trade. So the trade is the first step for the people to have the RMB abroad. I mean, for the other countries, if they are able to have more, I'm sure that there will be more kind of financial derivatives or products for the people to transact. But till now, I don't think that is the case for like the comparison of the United States in this regard. So I think that will be the direction, that will be the future for us to trying to have a better administration. I mean, looser one in the capital account, but I don't think that the government has already trying to do that right now.
Maybe before
Hey,
before
Mark,
turning back
Mark,
to Mark,
can I weigh in on a question?
please go ahead.
You said undervaluation, which always gets my attention. So I wanted to say a word about that. You know, I dealt with Chinese exchange rate issues for decades. And, you know, it strikes me that when we were in the early noughts, China had a 10% of GDP current account surplus, intervention to that tune, and the currency was massively undervalued, and exports sustained the economy's strength. Then we get to the global financial crisis, and China engages in this massive credit expansion and investment in infrastructure. The current account surplus comes way down. 2015, 2016, problems. The next thing you know, housing is booming and sustaining demand in the Chinese economy. Then housing goes bust, right? And so now, since 2022 or so, if you look at a real exchange rate graph for the RMB, it plummets, right? Some 15, 17%. You may know the number, but that's what I have in my brain. And recently it's been creeping up, but remember, if China has zero inflation and we have 3% inflation, then if the currency stays steady, China gains 3% in competitiveness, which is my way of saying that the real RMB may be rising a bit at this point, but it's coming from a very undervalued point. And so Chinese exports are extraordinarily competitive. We see this in the huge trade surplus. It's 10% of in manufacturing, the 10% of GDP surplus and whatnot. China's economy is weak. We know about this because of the housing woes, low confidence, etc. And so I think China needs net exports to meet its growth targets. And I think that China has, while the authorities will allow the RMB to appreciate a bit, we know it's a managed currency. I think they're not going to allow it to appreciate anywhere near enough to eat into the competitiveness in a major way because of the need for the net exports to meet growth targets.
Good.
Sorry, I wanted to say that.
No, please, sure. Dr. Zhou, maybe you could address that, because I see not only in the United States, but even in some emerging markets like Brazil, other countries, industrialized countries like Europe, are confronted with a huge rise of Chinese imports. And this seems to be causing not only social issues, but also encouraging protectionism. What can you tell us about maybe how the Chinese currency is managed? And do you think that the officials will allow the type of appreciation that Mr. Sobel just spoke of?
Well, yeah, in China, I think that currencies, exchange rates, especially in China's domestic market, are calculated daily by the code of the several traders, trading banks. They have some codes, and the central bank is using that average of this code to get the start of that exchange rate. I will not deny that the administration, the central bank, will give some administration or suggestions for some of this transaction, but mainly they are based on the market demand and the supply on the different issues about the goods, about the services, about the foreign trade also included. So as for if you're looking at the data of the first 2 months of this year, it's just published yesterday. So the GDP is growing much faster than we anticipated, and yes, I agree that the foreign trade increased to almost 20% compared with last year for the first 2 months. But I would say that is accumulated effects about last year's month-to-month protectionism of United States, about the people are really want to have a stable connections with the market, so they are depending more to China, because not only because of the currency problems, about the trade confidence, about the expectation, about the stability of the possible market in the United States. So this is one of the issue. I would have to say that real estate is still weak, but it's much better than last year and the year before last. So the real estates, the problem is still are transferring from investment portfolio to a little bit more accommodation for the people. So actually, this is the intention of the government. We are not trying to make the real estate as one of the investment portfolios. They should have the function of the meeting people's living requirement. So I will not say that is kind of challenge we cannot overcome. So we want to have it soft land, and now it's going to restart. But I need to say there are several very big companies, real estate companies, are suffering from the financial the deficits or some of the problems about the debts. But the market is still controllable. I would say that it's not our factor that we cannot deal with. So as for the exchange rate, there will be so many different factors, contradictory factors for the trade, for the investment, for different kind of issues. But the main idea is trying to have more stable, not too many changes, not too many fluctuations, based on especially compared with United States, with the US dollars.
Yes, thank you. That reminds me too of just the idea that during the post-World War II era, through the 1971, as Mr. Sobel pointed out, with end of Bretton Woods, exchange rates were very stable, and many countries experienced strong growth and relatively modest inflation during a period of very little foreign exchange fluctuation. I also am a bit surprised that when you talk about the RMB and the competitiveness, you didn't talk about the vertical integration of Chinese companies, something that U.S. companies have really, U.S. and European companies have really moved away from. And I thought that the vertical integration of Chinese companies is an important part of the competitiveness, controlling from controlling the whole supply chain and distribution. But anyways, I see that we're running out of time, and so we have a few minutes. And I thought that in the last, as we wind down a little bit, maybe you have questions for each other. And so maybe, Mr. Sobel, if you want to begin and just ask, if you can, Dr. Zhou a question that he can answer in a couple of minutes, and then he can ask you a question. Make it fair like that. Thank you.
This sounds dangerous. So I guess if I were so first of all, I want to tell you that on March 30th, I am hosting a 1-hour event on virtual on RMB internationalization with some leading American scholars on this issue. So it might be of interest to you, not to plug what other things I'm doing. And that'll be on OMFIF. I guess if I were to ask you, whenever I talk to Chinese economists, they suggest to me that the economy is weak and that it needs to, China needs to reorient its growth model, and that this is going to require support for consumption, services, and the social safety net at the expense of investment. So there needs to be a reorientation of the economy to a more sustainable growth pattern. And yet it doesn't happen. The leadership has concerns, I guess, about high leverage and local central government relations, one hears. What's your take on it? And I think most people, the Chinese economists I talk to, while They say this is where we need to go. They don't expect the government to go there. What are your thoughts on that issue?
Yes, I think that you must have heard that China have our new development strategies. That is kind of ideas to trying to encourage the domestic market in the priority position. So in this regard, I think that consumption is definitely the most important task for the Chinese government. If you're looking at the report of the State Council, this year, I think that they put the consumption in the first position, and we are trying to give the people more choices. That is from one side. From other side, we are trying to give the people more income, as you mentioned about the social securities or other kind of welfares. That is one thing we are going to do, but the other things we are trying to create more jobs. These jobs are not coming just from the digital economy, maybe coming from the manufacturing, from the services, from the more interactions between China and other countries. So in this regard, we want to put that in a better position because we know that is important. We cannot depend too much on the international market, and especially when we're seeing some of the protectionism from the United States and some from EU also, and that would be not so safer for us to reach our goal, the Chinese dream. So I will say that if you compare it with targets of GDP this year, we set it to 4.5 to 5 points, which is a little bit lower compared with last year. But generally, I would say that in the 5 years term, it is still strong, very strong. It can also fulfill our targets of what we're going to call a Chinese modernization process. I think that is definitely what we managed to try to fulfill.
Thank you. Maybe Dr. Zhou, maybe you have a question for Mr. Sobel before we wind down.
Has to be easy.
So do we still have time?
Please, yes.
And okay, so some of my friends told me that maybe it's not the right time to just still believe in the U.S. stock market right now. They suggested me to try to care more about the technology. So I don't think. Can you give me some of your understanding about what do you think of the AI, in the stock market of the United States or AI economy? Right now or in the coming year, we are seeing some new invention, open claw, or which is quite popular here in China. I don't know what is happening in the United States, and do you think it will bring the foam bigger or bubble bigger, or doing something else to make it better, more efficient of the economy?
So this is an area I am extremely not expert in. I'm old. Mark was talking about gray beards and gray hairs. He should have said bald hairs in my case. So I don't understand all this new technology. I guess what we have seen in the U.S. Is that there's some very good firms, U.S.-based firms that have been engaged in massive investments in artificial intelligence and data centers and the like. And so you saw the Magnificent Seven stock prices rising very substantially. I'm not sure that they're going to continue to make the heavy investments that they did last year in this year with the same force. But I think most economists think that CapEx investment from these firms will be a tailwind, not a headwind, this year to some extent. Now, the equity prices haven't been doing as well for the Magnificent Seven recently. They've been leveling off. The stock market concentration of these firms is very high. Ultimately, I assume it will depend. What happens is going to depend on how quickly does AI diffuse into the economy? How much does it boost productivity? And I think that, if you find a bunch of economists, they will have huge debates about the uptake of AI to date and how quickly it will diffuse throughout the economy. I think most people think that there's significant overinvestment in AI and there's going to be a big winnowing out. But the firms that will stand will do very well. So I don't really have a good answer to your question, because I think much of this is yet to come. And then, as my bosses used to tell me in the olden day, if I knew what was going to happen in the stock market, I'd be a millionaire and I wouldn't be here at the Treasury.
Thank you very much. The AI discussion is really fascinating, because I think that part of it is related to energy. Is who's got a more modern grid, who's producing the energy. And I think this is one area that the U.S. is trailing China. And the other point I'd say about AI is, while people like me and perhaps like Mr. Sobel are using AI as on these large language machines, asking like a smart search engine or do some research for us, I see videos of Chinese companies embedding the AI inside the robots. And perhaps that's the future of production, as well as who's got not only can create the AI, but then it can embed it, as Mark was saying, in the sort of the dispersion of the technology. I see, though, we're running out of time. I want to thank both of the guests, Dr. Zhou Mi from China and Marc Sobel here in the United States. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciated the engaging conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My goodness, Mark, what a wonderful 1 hour we spent, thanks to your excellently moderated job on this panel. And what an honor to have Dr. Zhou and Mr. Sobel. Their expertise needs to be listened to so much more carefully. There was a question earlier about the audience on Polaris Live, and let me just say that our live viewers for some have been pretty much consistent in the 30, 40, 50 online viewer range. But from then on, it continues to grow and will grow into the hundreds, thousands. We've had 30, 40, 50,000 viewers. One of our programs was recently translated into Mandarin, Mark, as you know, and by a social site in China, which got 500,000 views in 4 days. So this kind of a program and this kind of a show is rarely seen these days. We do it because we think it's in the best interest, Mark, as you said, the consequential relationship between the U.S. and China, 40% or more of the growth in the economy. So anyway, before I let you go, Mark, tell me one thing that stuck out from the show for you.
I'd say really two things, if I could quickly. One is that I thought that Mr. Sobel tried to balance his concern about the losing trust, the course of U.S. policy, the alienation of some allies, with the idea that still there's no rival to the U.S. dollar. That was one takeaway. And the other takeaway I'd say is that Mr. Zhou, Dr. Zhou was, I thought, more candid with his understanding that he also recognizes, as Marc Sobel had said about boosting consumption, he realized this is a direction for the modernization of the Chinese economy, but seemed to be reluctant to really go out on the limb and say that it would be delivered upon.
Yes. Well, thank you for that, my friend. And Mr. Chandler, you're always a pleasure to be with. I learn a lot from you. Thank you for taking your valuable time to be the guest anchor and moderating this program. I hope you'll come back and see us very soon.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you also to our viewers from around the world. I want to tell you again that this has been the first Polaris Live Roundtable, our platform to continue to explore the most consequential relationship of our time in some depth. Please remember, we are totally viewer supported, so please sign up for our newsletter at kashmiri.com and also make a nominal subscription through our Substack channel. That way we keep commercial free and continue our dialogue. Our next program will be on 31st March when we will feature Professor Dao Jiang of Peking University, and we'll continue on with the discussion that we were having today. Until then, goodbye.